Film doesn't lie. This one is going to be live. So there's going to be some times that I bring videos to you guys where I have notes and I want to show you some particular things, or we can reverse engineer and get some drills that you're doing on a day-to-day basis as part of your workouts, which I have for you as well in the Academy, L Academy. Tap in for that. But this is going to be something that we're watching live. I haven't watched all of the Abdullah Mason fight. Even though I am a boxing coach, I don't watch every fight live, and I don't get a chance to watch every fight live that's going on. But I am going to film study and research a lot of them for ways for you guys as fighters to get better and athletes to get better overall. So this one we are watching live together, so we get to kind of look at my process of how I film study and how I break down film. I do the same thing for basketball too, and I do the same thing for a lot of stuff because I'm not only a boxing coach, I'm a basketball coach, strength and conditioning coach, and nutrition coach as well. So even though I don't actively coach basketball at the moment, I still am in player development. And even though I only have a couple amateur fighters and help with a couple pros, I don't have that as my full thing that I do full time. So this is a way for us to help you, or myself to help you, or us to help each other with how to get better with the workouts that you do on your own, so you're better with your coach and you're just a better athlete and fighter overall. So let's take a look at this Abdullah Mason fight. First things first, judging by the time, you can tell that these are highlights. Let's skip the ad.
This is a tough fight coming back, especially after 2 knockdowns. It's not an easy fight. He saw that lead hand reach to parry the jab.
Right away. We'll go back to that because there's a couple things that happened before. But if we're looking at, with this being a highlight, the first important punches that happen. So what is going on actually? So this is a clip before when they're in the clinch.
He saw that.
But right now, they are both already in an engagement, right? So when I talk to my fighters, when I talk to people overall, it's understanding that when does the fight really actually start? And a lot of coaches will talk about, okay, getting on the line, getting off the line. But as you're moving around the ring, the fight doesn't really start until you guys are both in an area where either you can get hit by the opponent or the opponent can hit you. And realistically, when it comes to weight classes, anytime that an opponent is able to hit you, you should in turn be able to hit him. That's just kind of how the weight classes work. You guys are similar height, similar size, close enough reach, right? It's not David versus Goliath type situation. So now we're looking at Abdullah Mason and then Jaimez. They are now in a position where both of them can hit each other. So the questions, or what they're trying to figure out, is how do I hit my opponent without getting hit, and how is my opponent trying to hit me without getting hit? So these are the questions that they're asking right now. So let's see what Abdullah Mason does. He gets into position. So depending on what your coach's system all, because I want to speak to all of these things because we all have different coaches, whether your coach calls it front foot, back foot. Abdullah Mason is going from his front foot to his back foot, and he did it first, right? He did it early. So let's take a look at this. Right now, so in this position, he's on the front foot. When he gets to the front foot, he is now high guard, right? High horns, both hands up, protecting his front foot position or the line. And his opponent is doing the same thing. Now, something to notice, that one is in the Orthodox stance with their left foot forward. One is in the Southpaw stance with their right foot forward. So the questions that's being asked right now from Abdullah Mason is, when I get into this position or I get to my front foot, what is my opponent going to do? Because I'm not attacking just yet. The answer that he is getting is his opponent is going into a high guard as well. Next position, his opponent moved to the back foot, and Abdullah Mason also moved to the back foot. If you notice, for a split second, both of them dropped their lead hands. So Abdullah Mason went to the front foot position or got on the line, and then he got off the line, and they both did similar things. Abdullah Mason is going to do it again. He steps slightly forward. Doesn't go high guard again like he did before, but his opponent still is in high guard. So now we are in this situation here. The question that you should be asking yourself is, why did Abdullah Mason do what he did? Well, the answer in the film is going to be when Abdullah Mason got to his front foot and he was in high guard, his opponent didn't attack. He got to the high guard again. His opponent didn't attack. He got to that position. Well, not the high guard. He got to his front foot position again. His opponent didn't attack. So that means Abdullah Mason wants to attack first. His way to attack is stepping jab, and just based on what the film looks like, he's probably going to throw a rear hand, which is his left hand from the southpaw stance. A lot of coaches will teach the importance of the outside leg. If you notice, Abdullah Mason steps forward with this jab, and his position in his foot is to the outside of his opponent's lead leg, southpaw orthodox stance. Why is that important? Hitting your opponent with big punches without there being a consequence or risk is really important, and it's the theory behind hitting and not getting hit. Abdullah Mason is very explosive, very strong, very athletic, very powerful, and you can tell by these shots that he just threw how explosive and powerful he is. So based on this highlight, round 1, 11 seconds left, our assumption is that this is the most important punch that's happened so far. If we're doing an entire film study, not on highlights, we would say what happened in the 2 minutes and 49 seconds before, which told Abdullah Mason that he could do this, or did he just get that information in this quick engagement?
Off the mark with it right now, but you saw that lead hand up, protecting his face right there on the inside. You seen his eyes. He was completely focused, dialed in.
Almost similar, right? So if we're back to the idea and the theory of the boxing, is they are both in engagement range. They have started choreography. They are fighting, actually, right? So now Abdullah Mason is figuring out, when can I start my attack with the least amount of risk? And his opponent is telling him this information because, once again, as we start here, Abdullah Mason, front foot, again, asking the question, but then at the same time protecting this position that he's in according to where his opponent is at. Leaves the line or goes to the back foot and protects that position, seeing what his opponent does when he does this. Back to the front foot, asking the question, getting off the line, showing something similar but different, dropping the hand, back to the front foot, back to the back foot. Now he's understood that every time that I got to the front foot, nothing came. When I went to the back foot, nothing came. So now I'm going to get to the front foot again and be first. And the way I'm going to be first and score points is with my jab. His opponent blocks and leaves the line. Abdullah steps in again, front foot. His opponent is also front foot. Abdullah Mason gets to the back foot this time, which means that he leaves the line. He went from the front foot, he went to the back foot. His opponent hasn't attacked him as he left the line just yet. So Jaimez, now at this point, uses that as an opportunity to attack Abdullah. What's the issue? Abdullah gets off the line and throws a shot at the same time. Let's see what his opponent does. And let's see if his opponent did the correct thing or not. What would be the correct thing? That would be, after I'm done hitting you, make sure I don't get hit. Looks as though he didn't do the correct thing. Now, there's a bunch of reasons why this could have happened, but just from a theory standpoint, his opponent should have made sure that he was safe to throw this punch before he threw it. I don't think he got enough information to figure out if he could safely throw this punch at Abdullah. So the result Once again, we're watching a highlight. We haven't watched the full fight. I told you guys I haven't watched the full fight. So it's round 2 of 8. 2 minutes and 39 seconds left in the round. So if his opponent threw this punch, that means that he should have got enough information in the first 3 minutes of the first round, and he should have got enough information in this 21 seconds of round 2. Judging by what the film says, I don't know if he got enough information. If he did, this wouldn't have been the result. Now, here's the flip side of it. What was the information that Abdullah got to throw this shot when their opponent did this? I don't know. I'm not watching the full film. We're watching highlights. The way that we would figure this out is we would watch the information before. Did Abdullah Mason get this information from the round? Round 1 in the first 3 minutes and in the 21 seconds that has transpired in the second round? Or is this a tendency that Abdullah Mason has and a tactic that he has based on their coach watching previous positions that his opponent has gotten in, or his coach setting up a theory and a game plan for what Abdullah Mason would do when he got into this position? What is that position? Him going from his front foot to the back foot, and his opponent from an orthodox position trying to attack his back foot position with the lead right hand.
I told you, give him the reach. There it is. I told you. Watch the reaction. So we just got done talking about Tank Davis and
So let's look at this engagement once again, and we'll go back just so we can see, and we'll pause it. So his opponent throws a jab. His opponent is in the southpaw stance, it looks like. All right, let's double check.
there it is. I told you. Watch the reaction. So we just got.
So they are both in southpaw stances right now, which is the same thing as far as both being in the orthodox position. And so Abdullah Mason is on the back foot, as you can see, which would be, if your coaches talk about the line, what you can see now, the line would be where his opponent's black glove is and Abdullah Mason's white glove. If you notice, Abdullah Mason is on one side of that line and his opponent is on the other side of the line. How did his opponent get there? He got there after he threw a jab. Let's watch it again.
I told you. Watch the reaction. So we just.
Opponent threw the jab, stepped with it, and then is now on the back foot. Abdullah Mason interacted with the jab and got to the back foot. So now we're here. Abdullah Mason dips. They are now infighting, as you can say. They disengage from infighting. His opponent now is back into an orthodox stance, as you can see. And his foot is in mirroring positions to what Abdullah's was when Abdullah landed that first engagement that we saw, which was a southpaw jab and a rear hand that knocked Jaimez off the line. So, if you notice, when I am in an orthodox position and I go from my front foot, which is my left foot, to my back foot, if I'm going back in with a punch, which is my rear hand, I am going to end on my front foot again. So what does Abdullah Mason do? Very similar to what he did in the knockdown, which was throw a left hand, his rear hand, an uppercut at his opponent as his opponent was going from his back foot, which is his right toe, to his front foot with a right hand. Similar thing to the knockdown, just a different situation of how his opponent got there and how Abdullah Mason got there. But that's why you should be training positions. So let's watch it again live.
So we just got done talking about Tank Davis and
So how do these things happen? If you don't know, continue to watch film studies with me. I'll break it down as much as possible. And we're going to give you drills as far as for how you can do this as well. But this is another note to say, right? Have a certain humility when you watch film to understand that you don't know everything. And also with technology now, we have the ability to look at film. I have the ability to pause and break down this information in slow motion. So for everybody who's saying that old fighters used to suck, this goes for basketball too, as far as for the older generation used to suck. The nature of starting something means that the people who come after you should be better than the people before, because they have a metrics and a standard to look at and study. So if you're not getting better at boxing, or if you're not getting better at your particular craft, it just means that you don't care enough. The information is here. If you want to get better at fighting, you should watch fighting. Then break down the skills that are required for you to learn to its smallest detail. Do those on a consistent daily basis, and then also apply those skills so you can get better at the actual thing that you're trying to do.
Body shot. That was a left hook to the middle. Again, you want to see the similarities. You want to know the similarities? Who other than Abdullah Mason and Jaimez?
Same thing. And this is the same information that was given. That fast. They disengaged and they got right back into an engagement. It's the same punch.
You want to see the similarities? You want to know the similarities? Who other?
Get to the line. Protect your position. High guard, high horns, whatever your coach's system is. Your opponent is doing the same thing, protecting their front foot position as well, or their aggressive stance. You get off the line and your opponent is giving you the same information that they gave you before, which means that when I go from my front foot to my back foot, they like to throw a rear hand at me. So what am I going to do? The same thing I've done the other two times that was advantageous for me. Throw a lead uppercut, or not a lead up. I'm mistaken. Throw a rear uppercut. But this time, because I didn't really get him out of there like I wanted to, so now I have to take more risk, which means I have to throw more punches, because the first punch that I'm landing is not getting him out of there. So even though this is a good option, this is a good counter, this is a good setup, this is a good trap, it's not doing enough to get this guy out of here like I want to. So after I throw this rear uppercut, I'm throwing the next punch based on my coach's system, which in this case, which is rear uppercut, lead hook. What do you do after you punch? The idea of hitting and not getting hit. So after Abdullah Mason threw this right hand, he decided to dip, get into an infighting position, get into a clinch, and allow the ref to do his job, because right now, none of these people or none of these fighters are in position to punch. So that's why the ref is there to separate them. Another note, there's a ref there because boxing is a sport. No matter what anybody says to you, boxing is a sport. They are wearing gloves to protect their hands. They have wraps to protect their hands. They have rules that they have to abide by. And there's a ref to make sure that those rules are being followed. If this wasn't a sport, none of those things would be there.
Cuts like that. Close that distance because he's out at range.
So, still, it's round 2, 32 seconds. So there's been a short amount of time, but there's been a lot that's going on. So this is a new setup, or this is a new engagement that we haven't talked about based on the highlight.
Throws uppercuts like that. Close that distance because he's out.
Right now, Abdullah Mason is controlling the fight with his feet, meaning he's moving. He's making his opponent move. Or if we're not being biased, or if we're looking at both opponents, they're both moving their feet right now. Abdullah Mason gets to his back foot. He stops and he explodes and he throws a rear hand. What does his opponent do as soon as he sees Abdullah Mason start throwing this rear-handed shot? He covers up. Abdullah Mason shoots to the body. His opponent is still covered up, and his opponent is bending down right now. So we have rear straight hand, What position is Abdullah Mason in? What is the next punch? What's the next part of the choreography? Abdullah Mason's hands are free to punch. His opponent's hands are free to punch, but doesn't look like he's in position to be able to punch. You could just look at his balance. You could look at his frame. He's getting knocked out of position. He has to reset. This is tough for him to hit back right now. What does his opponent do? His opponent was high guard at first to protect his front foot position. But if you notice, when his opponent left his front foot position or left the line or went back to the back foot position, he dropped his hands and exposed himself to the next punch that Abdullah Mason was going to throw, which was a lead hook. Southpaw stance versus Orthodox stance. So now if we talk about, because this is, I don't know how long this film study is going to be. Now if we talk about positions and if we talk about what you're supposed to be doing with your opponent when it comes to fighting, right? You're supposed to hit them without them hitting you, and then you're also not supposed to get hit and hit your opponent back. So what does his opponent Jaimez do as soon as Mason's done punching him? He just disengages. He does not make Abdullah Mason pay for trying to hit him. So as a fighter, haven't seen the whole fight just yet. If you don't have to pay for punching somebody, you're probably going to continue punching somebody, correct? So what does Abdullah Mason do? Gets to the line, punches him again. What does Jaimez do? Exits the line, exits the engagement without making Abdullah Mason pay for punching him. So what should Abdullah Mason do? Continue to punch him. But also be aware that his opponent might be setting up a shot to punch him back, tricking him, trapping him, getting to a counter position. So the next time that Abdullah Mason gets into an engagement, he should be prepared for that. Jaimez should be preparing to hit Abdullah Mason back with the idea that Abdullah Mason understands that we had two engagements and you punched me and I didn't do anything back. You should be assuming I'm going to do something back this time.
Another straight left from Abdullah Mason.
There it is. Abdullah Mason throws something. Jaimez looks to go ahead and throw something back. Do these look like similar positions that we've been seeing this whole time? Just getting there in a different way? Had Abdullah Mason really committed on this shot, which means throwing multiple punches at once, he would have got hit with that counter right hand that his opponent Jaimez threw. But instead, he knew that information and he just threw a jab, got off the line again. And what do you know? He threw the rear uppercut that he's been trying to throw for a while. But he missed this time. Why? Because Jaimez is a professional as well. May not be as good as Abdullah Mason. And once again, this is just an assumption. I haven't seen Jaimez fight, but we do understand how the business of boxing works. Abdullah Mason is next up. So they wouldn't put him in the ring with somebody that could potentially beat him this early. But even with that being said, Jaimez is understanding how boxing works as well, which means every single time I threw this right hand, after I finished, Abdullah Mason was throwing a rear uppercut at me. So after I finish this right hand, I should probably get my head out the way.
That's another straight left from Abdullah Mason, sets up that jab.
But back to the original question. Did you make Abdullah Mason pay for punching you or trying to punch you? The answer in the film is no. You just moved out the way. Defense is not scoring.
Nice stiff jab right here. You see him calculating his distance. Pow. Go ahead. He rushed and he leaped in with that right hand. You can't lunge against a sharpshooter like Abdullah Mason. If you lunge, he's going to make you pay. He steps back, gets a...
So if we talk about what are the skills required to be able to do these things, because we tend to think that one movement is just one thing, but movement is a combination of small movements put together. And with this, what do you have to be able to practice in order to be able to apply this in an actual fight? So you're on the front foot, You need to have the awareness and knowledge what would happen if you're on the front foot.
Like Abdullah Mason.
Moving to the back foot and having the awareness and knowledge what may come as you move to the back foot. So what can this be comprised of? What do you do with your hands when you get to the front foot to protect yourself? What do you do with your head as far as positionings, going from your front foot to your back foot? And then now the next question is, what do you need to do with your feet in order to no longer be in the same position that you were with your opponent to make them lunge or overextend, or more importantly, from an umbrella statement standpoint, get out of position so you can make them pay for trying to punch you?
Hey, he steps back.
Now, if we look here, Abdullah's hands as he's throwing this shot, why is his right hand going back to his face right now as he's throwing this left uppercut? Well, that's based on the position of his opponent. His opponent is now in a position where the next shot that he can throw is a left hand. So Abdullah Mason is already protecting that space that his opponent might take, just in case his opponent was prepared for this shot and trying to set up a left hand over the top for Abdullah Mason. But his opponent didn't do that. But for Abdullah Mason, it's better safe than sorry.
Gets a little bit distance, catch him as he's coming in, hits him right on the money with the shot he didn't see coming. He didn't expect that shot. Those shots that come underneath, you don't see them coming. They like sharks. Body shots. Good defense after. You see the guy underneath that. Oh, left uppercut again.
All right, so once again, we want to talk about your coach's systems. We want to talk about the people who are coaching you in their system. And the reason why it's important, so you can learn from everybody and learn from as many as people possible without learning bad habits. So when we talk about ranges in fighting, I teach fighters 4 ranges of boxing, and that's the reason why I teach that is because this is fighting more than anything. So when you fight at a 4th range, it's enough of a distance for you to assess the situation and realize, okay, is the person I'm fighting a boxer? Are they in a stance? Is the person I'm fighting into Muay Thai? Is the person I'm fighting a wrestler? Is the person I'm fighting a kickboxer? Is the person I'm fighting not know how to fight? It just gives you an opportunity to assess the situation without there being a risk. So now if we reverse engineer those positions or work backwards, we have 4th range, we have 3rd range, we have 2nd range, and you have 1st range. 4th range, 3rd range, which is long range, 2nd, medium to short, and 1st, which is infighting. So even though you have all those different ranges, positions are still very similar, and we can tell by the film right now.
They like sharks.
Right now, they are infighting. So let's look at head position right now. Abdullah Mason's head would be considered, if you look at him in a southpaw stance, which means that his right foot is closest to us on the screen, this would be him in the back foot, right? If you look at Jaimez, his opponent, he would be in an orthodox stance because his left foot is closest to us, right? Just by looking at this right now, you can obviously tell that they're pretty squared. Right. So even though it is southpaw orthodox, they're still pretty squared. So this is also the importance of understanding that you fight in positions as opposed to stances. Right. My stance is according to the position of my opponent and where they're at. So if I fight orthodox and somebody goes over my right foot and I don't move, I'm pretty much in southpaw now. So if we look here, we're paying attention to positions once again. Right now, Abdullah Mason is in position to throw left hands. If you notice from the idea of infighting, Jaimez is doing a decent job of trying to control Abdullah Mason's lead hand, which is his right hand right now. But Abdullah Mason's job is to fight with the free hand. Now, let's look at the position of the ref right now. And you ask yourself, according to the rules of boxing, are you allowed to hold an opponent's hand? You guys do a quick Google search or a ChatGPT search of that answer. And when you come back, now you'll go ahead and see, according to that rule, is the ref in position to make sure that those rules are applied? Just look at the ref. He can't see what's going on the other side. and he's not allowed to assume. He has to go over there and check. So all he sees is two free hands boxing right now. So here's the punch that we had talked about before when Abdullah Mason was throwing that rear uppercut and how he had his right hand tight to protect himself from the next position. This left hook that Jaimez is throwing right now is the next punch that he was able to throw based off of that rear uppercut. So how does Abdullah Mason deal with that left hook in this position? Well, he dips it and he rolls under it, and now they're back into that infighting position. So now, and this is important for us to see, Jaimez is in a position high guard once again. His gloves are on his face, hence the mean high guard. He's guarding high. And Abdullah Mason is on his back foot with his lead hand down, but some would call that a Philly shell position, right? Rolls underneath that left hook or that lead hook like we talked about. Back into the infighting position. Jaime does a good job of creating some separation. And he throws a right hand, and then he throws a lead uppercut from the orthodox position. Abdullah Mason is doing what he's supposed to be doing, defending his position. He gets off the line, going from his front foot to his back foot to avoid those punches, and dips to get away from the next shot. Do you guys see anything different in these positions? Is Abdullah Mason showing similar skills that he's just applying to different but similar situations and positions that he finds from Jaimez? Is Jaimez not doing the same thing that he's been doing for the entirety of this fight, which is not really making Abdullah Mason pay for hitting him?
Look at the speed and the power behind that. Tell him. Here he is on the inside right here, Abdullah Mason. There you go. He ducks that hook right there. Holds the phone, gets clipped with a small little shot right there, but boom. You see the combinations right there. The first shot definitely did most of the damage right there, but then the follow-up. Boom, right on the chin. My gosh. Short and compact shots.
One punch landed from Jaimez in round number 2. You see the defense right there. Right there. Nice.
So here's like a tip for you guys. Anytime that you can find angles where they're showing the above camera angle, find those. There's so much information that you can find in those.
Punch landed from Jaimez in round number 2. You see the defense right there. Right there.
So these positions are very similar, but when it comes to countering your opponent or taking advantage of your opponent, that's going to come with preparation. Unless you prepare to put yourself in positions according to what your opponent might do, it's probably not best to go over that entire choreography if you haven't practiced it. So the reason why I say that, if we look at the film now,
One punch landed from Jaimez.
right now, Abdullah Mason decided to start the engagement with that lead hook, his lead rear hook, his lead hook, which is his right hand from the southpaw stance, right? And that was the first part of the engagement. Right now, they're done fighting. Jaimez backs up. But as soon as he backs up, he decides to, like he's been doing for a while, whenever Abdullah Mason is in this position, Jaimez likes to throw a rear hand. And it's a lead right hand. It just so happens that Abdullah Mason wasn't prepared for that same technique. So what happened? Abdullah Mason got caught with a shot, but it wasn't a shot that ended the fight. So now we talk about being prepared for shots. If Abdullah Mason was prepared for this from a choreographed standpoint, he probably would have done what he's been doing for a while, which is his way to defend the right hand or counter the right hand from Jaimez was to take a half step back and shoot a rear uppercut, or stay in pocket and shoot a rear uppercut as Jaimez's head was going from his front foot, from his back foot to his front foot, right toe to left toe, right? But Abdullah wasn't prepared for this. So what does he do? He just defends it. What is defense? It's not scoring. He's not making Jaimez pay for trying to punch him right now in this moment because he wasn't prepared. Now, we're still in the same engagement. Abdullah Mason is a little bit more prepared now. And is Jaimez, based on the film, back into that position to throw a right hand again? You tell me what the film says. Now we talk about punch selection. Multiple times in this fight, Abdullah Mason has been taking that half step back or going from his front foot to his back foot and countering with a rear hand. The rear hand he's been countering with is a left uppercut. Has that been the best punch? I think best would be in the terms of the punch that ends the fight. It's the fourth round. Abdullah Mason's been throwing a rear uppercut, and the fight's still going on. So is it the best punch? We don't know. Abdullah Mason doesn't know either, because this time, similar situations, Jaimez throws a rear hand, his right hand at Abdullah Mason, and he takes a half step back, but this time he throws a rear hook. Similar effect. Jaime goes down again.
Nice right hand from Jaimez, and then that left hook from Abdullah Mason says, I'm going to let you get one, but the get back's going to be worse. And
Similar. Fight's not over yet. But your same preparation is working in this fight. It's getting you knockdowns. It's getting you in positions where you're able to land punches and make your opponent pay for trying to hit you. And also, you're allowed to hit your opponent without them hitting you.
And understanding that, hey, every time I step back or push off that front leg, and I step back, oh goodness. Forget about what I'm saying right now. I just want to see this finish right. There it is.
So at this point, can we see boxing as a sport? Did this fight end on these gentlemen's accord? Was this a street fight? No. The ref stopped the fight, as he should have. My man's been knocked down multiple times, and he has no answer.
It has to be the end. Fourth round, appetite for smoke. The entire Mason family is on their feet. Valley is happy.
So a couple takeaways from this fight, because obviously there's a lot of information here, not too much, right? But you can see the application of this skill from Abdullah Mason. His opponent, Jaimez, was getting into a lot of similar situations, but it's important to understand that taking advantage of situations and positions is based on your preparation before you get to the ring. So if I were to look at this fight, I would say that Abdullah Mason practices taking those half step backs when his opponent leads with the right hand or gets into a position where he goes from his back foot to his front foot in the orthodox position, and he decides to take advantage of his opponent then. Those things worked in this fight. So when it comes to the application or your field of play, when it's game time, your job is to be advantageous. It's not training. You're not working on your weaknesses. That's what training's for. That's what the preparation is for. When you get into the fight, it's about being advantageous. And where was Abdullah Mason advantageous, going from his front foot to his back foot, using his feet to have his opponent reach as his opponent was throwing a right hand, going from his back foot to his front foot, and he was taking advantage of that by throwing rear hands. The first 3 that caused a knockdown were left uppercuts to the head. The last one was a left hook to the head. So what should you be working on? A combination of what you should be doing with your hands, combination of what you should be doing with your feet, and a combination of what you should be doing with your head. In addition to paying attention to what your opponent does with their hands, head, and feet. And having the awareness and knowledge to know that even though you guys are both in the ring, when the fight actually starts. The episode of Film Doesn't Lie. I'll be back with more. And as well, if you guys need drills and tips and what you should be doing on a day-to-day basis to get better at boxing, let me know. I'll have that for you guys.